leaders or decks that were introduced, they all were very powerful. They all were very much respected. But Don Quixote Doflamingo has kind of been falling off in a lot of the top players' sort of wheelhouse, because in the beginning of the format, it was thought of as a really complicated deck to play against, and the better players can kind of take advantage of how strong some of the Don Quixote Pirates cards are in both consistency and power. But now it seems like people have kind of figured it out, but Nathan's like, no, no, no. I promise this deck's really good. I'm going to take it all the way to the finals, and here they are right now. This matchup, I don't think is going to be one that's defined by aggression, because both decks are very inherently defensive. But here we go. We have the finals beginning. Nathan has already gone first here, because I believe Paul had the ability to choose to go second in this final, and we are underway to figure out who's going to be our one-piece champion.
Yeah, so no one-drop Sugar or Dellinger is not something you like to see if you're Nathan over on the Doflamingo side. So now Ace, going into his first turn, is going to do a search of his own with Ezo, trying to find a Whitebeard Pirate type card, and finds I Am Whitebeard again. Like we showed in that deck profile earlier, one of the pieces of the puzzle, and just attaches one to leader and passes. You'll sometimes think that attaching the leader like that is a little strange, but if this Doflamingo leader decides to go ahead and swing at life, Ace will be able to draw an extra card if he so chooses to take it. But Doflamingo playing down the Violet, I'm sorry, a 3-cost blocker, and as a 5,000 power leader, can't swing at Ace.
Yep, and just a heads up, because this is an open decklist tournament, I can very much say that that Violet right there is a one-of in Nathan's deck, but it might be a very useful tool to him, because it kind of represents what this deck wants to do, have powerful on-KO effects that we can maybe utilize later on in the turns to either protect our life or trigger powerful effects via our leader ability. We have the Marco being played down here from Paul, which is an amazing turn 2 play here. It's going to protect our life and maybe even draw some cards in the process.
And so now on Doflamingo's 5 Dawn turn, he's going to play down that Virgo, right? You want to play that as early as possible, especially with all the different removal effects that I mentioned earlier with Ace. Going to be able to protect them on the field and make sure that they stick. So Virgo also having that when attacking minus 2,000 power with the Dawn -1 could give a little bit of good stuff with this Marco, with potentially a Jozu coming later or a Yamato to be able to control the board a little bit. So we see that Jozu right there picking up the Ezo, and he's going to attempt to remove the Virgo, and then with Virgo's protection effect, like I mentioned, do a Dawn minus instead once per turn to keep it on the field. You still like that if you're the Ace, just simply because you'll put a Dawn back from Don Quixote, Doflamingo, and Nathan. So the strategy's still going well. Going down to 3 life now is more than likely here soon going to go into Nathan's turn, but decides to swing with the Marco. Says, you know what, I'm still at 3 life. I got a good amount of cards in hand, relatively healthy. I might as well just go in and swing and see how Nathan reacts to this.
Yeah, I really like to see the way Paul is kind of pushing this Don Quixote deck, because it is naturally very defensive, but it costs some things. And right now we don't have that many ways to get those resources back as Doflamingo, so we want to make sure that we make it to where Nathan's curve is set so far behind, because this deck needs to play on curve. It needs to get to that 8 and 10 cost Doflamingo as soon as possible if it wants to mount any kind of pressure that Paul really cares about.
And so Nathan already taking the first 3 swings within this match, right? Already at 2 life. Ace still sitting at 3. Now has some Dawn to work with. He's thinking about playing 5, I think. It's a couple different 5 drops that he could play.
It's going to be the Monet here.
Monet going to be able, with that on play, to ramp in active Dawn, and now the Virgo coming in is going to do that when attacking Dawn -1 to minus 2,000 power. So for the rest of this turn, Marco would be a 4,000 power character. Lets that attack go and only draws 2 because there's no Dawn attached to the leader, so no extra draw. Now using one of his 2 Dawn left to go 6,000 power at lead, now try to command a card out of this Ace's hand. Ace has a couple different 1Ks like Yamato and also the Ezo that we saw. Just taking a look at that Monet, remember Monet has that on KO effect of being able to draw 2 trash 1 and ramp 2 up to 2 rested Dawn onto the field. So could be very nice to get Doflamingo to ramp into this game if he redirects an attack into that Monet later.
But there we see the leader ability of Ace, discarding that I Am Whitebeard event to minus 2,000 power of the leader and stop that attack from going through. We want to make sure that if we're taking damage, we're drawing a card in the process. Going to get rid of this event that has no counter to make sure that is happening.
That 1-drop Dellinger on the field could be a great redirect target for Nathan, right? Having that on KO effect of looking at the top 5 for a Don Quixote Pirates type card, adding it to the hand, and then re-ramping a Dawn. Fits perfectly with your leader effect, essentially making it a free search.
Also, here we go, seeing the Ezo here. That is our 8 Dawn turn, so we're not going to be able to activate an Iron Whitebeard this turn because we probably didn't have this 10 cost Edward Newgate in our hand, but now thanks to this Ezo we do. We saw us discard an Iron Whitebeard earlier, so if you're Nathan, you can assume 1's going to be played on the next turn. If not, that 10 cost is going to be coming down.
I kind of like this play from Paul, to be honest, especially because I think he's going to try to play something around like Yamato on this turn, right? To draw some extra cards, go a little bit wider on the board, and have some threats that can go in at stuff like this Virgo, right? More attacks, especially when Don Quixote Doflamingo is going to go ahead and redirect an attack with his leader effect. You want to have more the merrier, as some say. So going with another Ezo to just find another 10-drop Whitebeard, right? Perfect card to play in the coming turns. We'll see how he decides to move with the rest of his 6 Dawn. And there's that Yamato that I was talking about. Yamato, if you have 3 or less life, you draw 2 and give a rested Dawn to your leader. It's perfect for the Ace deck, even though it's a Land of Wano type card. And we just see this raw draw, especially because Nathan does not necessarily have any hand disruption in his deck. It's going to be really nice for Ace to stack up this hand with counter.
Here we see Paul kind of analyzing all of Nathan's resources. He wants to maybe do some math here to be like, okay, if I attack and you redirect into the Monet and you get your 2 Dawn back, how much Dawn are you going to be at next turn? I believe he'll end up being at 8 if he uses the Dawn -1 of the leader to redirect. Maybe 9. Yeah, because we're currently at 5 after using the effect. It's going to go into the Dellinger, though. With the on-KO effect of the Dellinger, we're going to get 1 Dawn back, as well as search for the top 5. And now we're seeing kind of how this deck for Doflamingo is maybe different from other decks you've seen in the past. The searchers are not on play, they're on KO. And you get more value out of them by stopping your opponent's attacks, as well as them adding to your consistency.
And I like the redirect into the Dellinger on this turn, right? You want the Monet to have pressure, especially as a base 6,000 power character. You won't have to commit any Dawn to try to swing at Ace and leaders. So he's going to be looking through this top 5. We see a couple things. I think there's an SP Sugar in that hand.
Very
the
cool.
1-drop Searcher that we showcased in the deck profile.
And yeah, something to note too about maybe trying to maintain those 6k bodies in play is that Dofli is famously a deck that likes to play on curve, but usually that means there's no extra Dawn for you to attach to your characters. And because you're a base 5k leader and Ace is base 6, you kind of blank one of your attacks every single turn, which is not going to be what you want against this deck that famously has a gigantic hand size that you need to fight through if you want to win the game.
So is thinking about attaching 1 to Jozu. We know that the leader effect has been used on the redirect, right? But just passes the turn, actually does not want to utilize the Jozu, is not confident on potentially an 8,000 power swing at the Virgo to be able to get that knockout. And especially if that Jozu does tap sideways, there's that Virgo to -2,000 power to make it easier to board control, especially because we saw Paul earlier in the top 32 round take down a purple Doflamingo. This is his 2nd time within this top cut in this matchup, so you gotta imagine he knows a little bit of what he's doing.
Yes, for sure. He's aware of the tricky nature that Dofi is trying to get under, and he's not gonna fall for any of it, it seems like. He's playing a patient game, he's playing the board building game, and in the game of One Piece, if you can build a board and maintain it, I don't care what color you are, what league you are, that's usually a pretty good strategy.
So starts out with a 6,000 power swing from Monet. Just tries to see what Paul is going to do when he tries to commit leader effect, but 2Ks out of it right there. We see the Virgo swing now. 7,000 power is going to be another 2K or leader effect to get out of that one. And no Dawn minus because there's no characters you want to swing at. You wouldn't want to punish yourself by minusing Dawn. So is going to use leader effect on Round Table. That's a tech that we've seen a lot of aces use lately in OP14, and is going to go with Sugar. Sugar is going to be able on that on play to ramp 1, and if on the on KO effect your opponent is at 6 or more Dawn, it's going to be able to play out a Don Quixote Pirates type character from your hand. So might be a nice way to get another body on board to be able to build up and pressure this Ace. So with the rest of the Dawn, is just going to attach another Virgo. I do like this Virgo attached just in case, one, you can't keep your rested Virgo alive, but also on top of that, just applies a lot of -2,000 power potential that you can use to control the board. So now going into a full 10 Dawn turn with Ace is going to use that I Am Whitebeard event to play out a 10 cost Newgate. We'll see if he decides to use the secondary effect to take a life and get +2,000 power. He has been healthy the entire time, sitting at the amount of life that's on his leader card right at 3. And I think he's thinking about it right now. He does have to decide to do that before using the on-play effect of the Edward Newgate. And it's kind of a tough choice to make, right? You wouldn't be able to get that extra draw from that life specifically, but if you're expecting a lot of swings from Virgo, Monet, right, and even the leader at you, being an 8,000 power leader is way harder for Doflamingo to swing at than 6.
Yeah, and there's also probably considerations too of can Paul afford to try to control the board, because now we're in 10 Kostovi territory, which has the potential to stun some of our characters and punish us for attacking without actually hard removing them, which does play around Ace's leader ability to draw cards.
And so is going to opt to use that ACOS I Am Whitebeard effect to take 1 life and be plus 2,000 power through your opponent's next turn, and now fulfilling the Edward Newgate. Not only does it draw cards, but it gives 2 Rested Dawn to both a leader and a character, making this Yamato an 8,000 power character. The Ace now potentially swinging 10,000 power. It's still crazy that this 10 cost card has so much value in this deck and starts out with an 8,000 power Yamato swing.
Yep, for 8 Dawn, we essentially got 14 Dawn worth of cards and a 12,000 blocker to boot. That drew us some cards. Pretty good.
Absolutely insane, and it's going to be interesting to see how Nathan reacts. He does still have that Violet there, a nice blocker that is going to be able to potentially grab an event from the trash, especially if he uses this Divine Departure here soon to be able to you know, counter out of an attack, whether it's at a character or a leader. Not 100% sure, but we see Divine Departure and a 1K, so I guess that 8,000 power swing was going at lead as that boots to 9.
And now Paul again is determining where the next attack should go. Maybe prioritizing going for the board now that we've seen cards from Doflamingo's hand. Usually players like to attack board and demand even more cards because you've lost 2, may as well lose 1 from the board now. But we're going to use the effect of our leader here to redirect the attack into our sugar. The on-KO effect will let us play a 5 cost or less Don Quixote Pirates from our hand. Do we have one?
Looks like he's aiming for Monet here.
I mean, double Monet, double Virgo is a pretty nice board into Ace.
Yeah, so definitely something that you really, really like, especially with 1 Dawn left open now. Basically means that your leader effect once again was free, and so goes with that Violet now on the leader swing. Is going to Dawn -1 to get that Divine Departure back, especially with all this Don Quixote Pirates type synergy. Violet grabs any purple event from the trash, so an unsearchable event like Divine Departure is so big for you.
Yeah, once you see 1, you essentially have found 2.
Yeah.
Another big event that this deck is known for playing is the slow beam, I believe, that Foxy Pirates normally uses. But like you said, Violet can get any purple event back.
So slow beam, we saw it in the hand there, is going to be impactful in this game, being able to rest any character on Paul's side on the defensive as a counter event. Starts out with a 6,000 power swing, probably at the Yamato if I had to take a guess, right, as all the other characters and leaders are above 6,000 power.
This could be a potential free block here from Paul. We now know that 1 Dawn's been committed, so the risk of 10 Kostovi coming down is no longer available. Maybe want to save that though for one of the Virgo swings in case they go -2 on something else and make that a protection. But we do also have a gigantic grip if we're Paul. I believe our hand is at least 8 cards, maybe even 9. I don't think we know much because I believe we only know 1 10 cost Newgate, and that's it. But we do have the Virgo coming down. We're going to go Dawn minus here on the Jozu to swing 7 to 5.
So it is going to have to be 2 cards out of hand or a free block, right? Whether those 2 cards are 2K, 1K, or anything of the sort, but just lets it get KO'd to draw 1 card, is not worried about it, is kind of prioritizing these Ezos, doesn't want to use that on opponent's attack effect yet to draw 1 and bottom deck 1 card. Maybe wants to open the board a little bit to be able to play a 10 cost Newgate without having to replace a character.
Also, for anyone those wondering, Ace checks base power of characters. So even though it was reduced from the Virgo, you still get the drop because you have the Dawn underneath your leader and it was being KO'd.
And so Baby 5, rounding out the 5th character on Don Quixote Doflamingo's side of the field, is going to be another one of those on-play ramp 1 Dawn as active, and we'll talk about the on-KO effect later. It's very impactful within this. Now going with another Virgo swing. I think went ahead and minus the Yamato, so now the Yamato being a 4,000 power character is going to go ahead and opt for the free block on the Newgate.
Yep, I respect that. And honestly, the more I'm looking at this board, Nathan's attackers in these Monet and Virgos are so annoying for Paul to deal with. He needs to start seeing things like Atmos and Jozu immediately.
Well, even then, with the Virgo's protection effect, Jozu and Atmos are definitely a stunt, right, to be able to try to remove them on the field. So is going to be very difficult, as you're saying. It's a nice board for Nathan right here.
And now we're just debating where the next attacks are going to go. We've demanded a lot of answers from Paul, but I don't think we're quite in a position where we can realistically threaten their life total. So we're probably just going to keep attacking board, especially now that we've reduced the Yamato.
Maybe wants to leave 2 Dawn open for that slow beam in hand, but he's thinking about attaching 2 for an 8,000 power swing now at the 4,000 power Yamato and lets that get KO'd. And again, the ace effect once per turn, so does not get that extra draw.
I want to note that even though Nathan took his first 3 life very aggressively this turn, I think for the past, I don't know, 4 turns, there's been not a single life card taken.
Definitely going to be interesting here, especially with, you know, a little bit of board that Nathan has available to him. Just attaches all of the Dawn to the Monet, but actually does not want to do that potentially. But no, is he going to commit to the 10,000 power swing now, going in at lead? That's going to force 2 cards out of hand from Paul and the ace, right? And he has plenty of cards to work with. Could be leader effect in 1K to get out of it. Could be just taking a life, right?
Yeah, you definitely want to, I think, stop this attack here if you're Paul, because going down to 1 this early without getting the value out of your leader effect probably is not good enough. But you do have a 4-card hand over on Nathan's side. But one thing that the ace deck is not really known for being is kind of out of the gate aggressive. So because Nathan has gone for a board control route this turn, it's going to be really tough for Paul to kind of like punish this over attaching of the Dawn. So I definitely think he wants to buy as much time as possible to kind of rebuild his board. So we're going to go ahead and counter out of that Monet attack and begin our turn as Paul.
So one of the things that you're seeing on Paul's side is there's not many attackers,
That's right?
There's Leader, there's Edward Newgate, right? And one of those attacks could be redirected into Baby 5, which could potentially, with that on-KO effect, if he Dawn minuses 1, he could heal a life, right? So you could swing at lead expecting him to take a life, and then all of a sudden, well, he's going to gain 1 instead.
Yeah, this is actually a really awkward position for Paul. But one nice thing is that he doesn't necessarily need to play around things like slow beam, which had the risk of maybe, you know, resting his Edward Newgate blocker, which would definitely be like an awkward thing for him to play around. But he would probably be playing into it later on in the game by playing more characters out this turn. It's a pretty tough call here, but usually you can't go wrong with playing down another 10-cost Newgate after playing 1 the previous turn.
And I like playing this Edward Newgate down, right? Just getting the big wall up, right, of these 12,000 power 10-cost blockers. Goes for the draw 2 and trash 1, and he'll be able to go ahead and put 2 Dawn on both a leader and character, opting for the Newgate blocker and also the leader ace. We'll see if he decides to swing in with this Newgate blocker that he's attached onto, but first starts out with 8,000 power at lead, and it looks like Nathan really wants to take it right now.
Right, and I think what he's probably trying to do is he wants to go for it, but Paul just passes. He kind of maybe baited Nathan into taking it, because if he redirects, he could just attack with Newgate afterwards, but since he didn't, he's not going to risk the redirection into one of the characters in play to give Nathan some extra advantage. He says, you know what, I got 2 blockers, you may have a lot of attacks, but they're not that big, and I have 2 life and a gigantic hand. I think I can manage just fine.
Especially with the knowledge of Divine Departure in the hand as well for minus 8,000 power. Does not want to risk this Newgate, right, if he were to turn it sideways, and now kind of makes it a little bit awkward, right? Doflamingo, if he wants to play it down another character, he's going to have to play over something. But starts out with an 8,000 power to swing to a 6,000 power leader, takes it and draws 1 card because of that leader effect, just giving him access to as many cards as possible in the beginning stages of Nathan's turn.
Nathan attached 2 down to Monet, trying to take 2 cards out of Ace's hand, but really he gave him 2 cards in the process.
A lot of times when you're playing up against Ace, no matter what deck you're playing, right, you want to swing that 8,000 power. You want to get him to use his minus 2,000 power leader effect and give you another card in hand on top of that. 8's typically pretty good, as we see another one now coming with the Virgo. So goes ahead and uses the Virgo effect to minus 2,000 power the Edward Newgate. That just makes it so if he doesn't block with this Newgate now, the other Virgo could come in with another minus 2,000 power and potentially have more power than that Newgate specifically. There's still a lot of time before that, and you know, there's a lot of factors that play into this right now, but that Newgate now for the rest of this turn is going to be 10,000 power instead of 12.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting for Paul here that if he decides to either block or counter, that there's more attacks afterwards that he has to take into account. So we are going to choose to counter out of it, because if we block too early, we could be playing into a thing like Divine Departure, like you mentioned, Jake, and we don't want to risk that when we know there's 2 more attacks. We want to save these blockers for when they can get us the most amount of value without putting them actually at risk.
So did 2K, 1K out of that with the Otama and Monkey D. Garp. Remember that Divine Departure, all you need is a Dawn attached to a leader or character, and then you tap some additional Dawn to be able to minus 8,000 power. That is going to be 5 Dawn rested extra exactly, so it's 6 Dawn in total for that play.
Which I believe we have 7 and or 6 right now for Nathan. It's a little hard to tell from all the gold that's over there.
We should have 7 Dawn left as active, with 1 attached to each character and 1 that was minus back into the Dawn deck because of the Virgo effect. So this is a tricky spot, honestly, if you're Nathan right now.
Because Paul's kind of like not giving you the option to control board until it's too late.
Yeah, so definitely a tricky one right here. We'll see what the correct numbers are, especially with leader. He may not even play a character at all right now. Maybe just continue to attach the Dawn onto these different characters and leader, and then maybe leave a couple open for that aforementioned slow beam like you were talking about, especially that 2 Newgate blockers are now on the field.
Right, the biggest way to play around slow beam is by having fewer characters in play, but because Paul has plenty, especially big targets like those 10 drops, it'd be pretty ideal for Nathan to do so on the following turn, but that does maybe turn him off of playing things like Divine Departure this turn to actually control the board, which maybe he would prefer. Why rest something when you can get it off the board entirely?
Now, Paul knows that Paul doesn't know that Nathan has slow beam in the hand. We just know from the fortune of our camera angle. Starts out with an 8,000 power swing with the Monet, is just going to go ahead and block with that 10,000 power Newgate. Does not give any additional information about the hand or anything like that. Still has Virgo and his leader to swing with. Baby 5 being a 1,000 power character is not traditionally something that a lot of people will swing with, so I don't think you necessarily need to worry about that, but is definitely an option in the later stages of the game, but Paul still has plenty of cards in hand.
I've been known to attach a bunch of Dawn to a 0 power character and swing with it. I'm sure something like that is not out of the question in the game of One Piece.
Sometimes it's the ultimate glory to go for game.
So here we see another 8K swing again. That magic number that you want to be fighting for. It demands a minimum of 2 cards out of Paul, and whenever you commit Dawn, you always want to try to get as much value out of your opponent's hand as possible, especially against a deck like Ace, which is known for just crowding a giant hand. And then we see another free block there. We've got the Virgo, no effect, 7 at the leader. We're going to demand a leader ability here, maybe a 2K. It's going to be the leader ability. Oh, no, yeah, that's an Atmos.
It's going to be a leader ability, right? To be able to minus 2,000 power on the Virgo to make that Virgo a 5,000 power character versus the Ace's 6,000 power stat line. So goes ahead into Ace's next turn. If he's got another 10-cost Newgate, could be very nice to play right now.
3 in a row,
right?
Crazy.
I mean, with a deck that draws so many cards,
it's
right,
not out of the question.
Ace. Yeah, I've seen plenty of Ace players play all 4 Newgates down onto the field throughout the course of a long game. So he's going to go ahead for that 3rd Newgate like I was mentioning. And once again, we go into the draw 2 trash 1. We see a Cavendish there, right, from OP10, that Dressrosa alternate art. Pitched on the effect, right, because it is a brick in hand. You don't want to have too many of those. And now the 8,000 power swing. I think going at lead as of right now, but could maybe be swinging into some of these different characters. We see 2 Dawn left active that could be for slow beam to rest one of these characters, and is going to go exactly for that.
Slow beam, Dawn -1, we're going to get, I believe, a total of plus 4,000 power and the ability to rest, plus 2,000 power and the ability to rest one of our opponent's characters. We're going to rest that Newgate that was given the 2 active Dawn, but we still need a bit more counter out of Nathan here to stop this 8K swing.
Is going to have to be a 2K to go to 9,000 power, and that Usohachi SP is going to be the choice to get out of that. And now, just as past, doesn't want to swing with too many blockers, and Slow Beam just such a good card. Now, Paul only has access to 2 free blocks potentially within this turn.
Yeah, and Nathan still has plenty of attacks that can fight through these blocks, but he might need to commit to Dawn in the early turns, in the beginning of his turn, in order to kind of force the question of whether or not Paul is going to commit these blocks or not. And we still have a pretty big hand for Paul here, so even though there's a lot of attacks, I think the aggression is manageable.
Well, one thing that is still on the field is Baby 5, right? We didn't redirect any attack with Doflamingo's leader effect in the last turn, so effectively, we almost have 2 life right now as Doflamingo, right? Especially with that on-KO effect of the Baby 5. So it's going to be curious to see how it progresses, but we're definitely hitting the late stages of this game. And he's thinking of attaching 1 Dawn and swinging another 6,000 power, or 8,000 power, I'm sorry, over at lead. But looks like, I think he's going with the Divine Departure right now, attaching 1 Dawn to Virgo, resting 5 additional 1. It's going to be minus 8,000 power to the Edward Newgate to make it a 4,000 power character right now, and he might just start swinging at it.
And now we can make it a minus another 2, making it only a 2,000 power character here. So if you're Paul, you do have a free block here, but is it worth trying to protect this versus your life? Tough call.
You do have a couple free blocks with the Edward Newgates, but honestly, at this point, especially when all these characters are base 6,000 and 7,000 power, you don't want to commit so many cards within your hand, so maybe you just want to give it up, right, and try to get these redirects into lead, or maybe try to stall as long as possible, right, with these different free blocks like we see right here on that one, to try to just not get as many swings at lead, because KOing a rested blocker is almost as if that blocker blocked.
Yeah. But it is worth noting, though, that that's also one of Paul's attackers. And like you said, Nathan has the potential of having 2 life on the following turn plus a redirect, so it might be hard for Paul to close out this game. And his hand's really big, but these attacks add up every single turn, and he's still losing card after card after card. So he is going to decide to give up that Newgate because it's a base power of at least 6k or more. We are going to get the leader draw here, even though it was reduced. And now Nathan only has 3 attacks left. One of them is against a 12k blocker, and he has very few Dawn to use to actually get to those numbers that he needs to threaten the hand of Paul. So here we're seeing once again the awkwardness of the stats on Nathan's side and how it lines to the stats of Paul's cards.
But it's kind of interesting, right? He's kind of come to this like stabilization point, right? Doesn't need to play down characters. He's just trying to utilize this Dawn to get more and more power, and soon he'll redirect into Baby 5 to give him a quick heal. So after that free block on the Virgo is going to go with another 8,000 power swing with the Monet. Once again, like we talked about, just trying to get 2 cards out of Paul's hand with every single attack. So is going to use the Jozu. I think is going to go ahead with leader effect on Jozu, and then an additional 1k, right, to be able to get out of that one. And now attaching the last on for a 6,000 power swing. I think both of those blockers should be rested. He's going to have to give a 1k out in there with the Yamato, and now passing off the turn. Just getting a little bit ahead of himself there.
Nathan Paul's like, you're going to keep that Dawn up, right? He's like, no, I'm attaching and I'm attacking. He's like, oh, okay, here's a Yamato. It is curious to see Paul choosing to discard that Jozu there, because that's a potential answer for the Baby 5 that's in play to kind of dodge that on KO effect. But so I'm a little curious as to why he didn't maybe value that. No, now I know why, because he had a 4th copy of 10 cost Edward Newgate in his hand. Oh, and that's correct. We do have the Virgo protecting the Baby 5.
Yeah, so that 4th 10 cost Newgate is going to be such a big deal, right? All of those blockers, but if you're Nathan now at this point, there's no more that can come, right? There's no more draw.
Just the 4 that you've already gone up against.
Yeah, and reusing the Dawn. So is going to go ahead and do that. Is going to get 2 rested Dawn attached to leader, and the Newgate now swinging 10,000 power is going to go ahead and take the life right here. And now, I think if you're Paul, especially with the Goldie Roger in your hand, Goldie Roger is going to be such a huge card, especially if you can get Nathan down to 0. But the redirect on the next swing is going to go into that Baby 5, and the Dawn -1 with the on KO effect, getting him a life. And now with that other Newgate swing is going to go ahead and take the life, going back down to 0. Has 4 swings with his characters and 1 with leader potentially to try to win this game, but potentially like an 8-card hand on Paul's side.
But here we see Paul choosing to use his blockers to attack, only leaving 1 up into these potential 5 attacks with only 1 life. He's putting a lot of confidence in his ability to counter out of the attacks that Nathan has available to them. Does Nathan try to go for it this turn, knowing that if he doesn't, he might just be losing on the following turn?
Yeah, a bunch of different bodies. You were able to get a little cheeky with the Divine Departure to be able to get rid of 1 of the Newgates, but there's 3 more staring at you right now. We see another Baby 5 in the hand to potentially get him to heal, but I don't know if that would be enough to be able to save him at this point. Does still have, I think, no, it doesn't have a Divine Departure in hand anymore.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, Goldie Roger only works if you're being blocked, right? Not if you're being redirected.
Yes, Goldie Roger, if you do not know, the OP09 secret rare is that 10 cost with Rush that says when your opponent activates blocker, if either you or your opponent has 0 life cards, you win the game. So if Nathan were to play like a Violet, for example, on this turn, and then Paul played the Goldie Roger and rushed in, if Nathan were to block hypothetically with that Violet, he would instantly lose the game.
And also, it just having Rush naturally might be good enough to kind of close out the game too, because we can go 6, 12, 12, 12, and then play a 13 afterwards.
Still got to go through Nathan's turn. Looks like he's going to opt for the Baby 5 once again to be able to ramp 1 with that on-play effect and go ahead and potentially heal 1 in the coming turns. Might try to feint up like a slow beam. right on his side, and it looks like with, we are going to play another Divine Departure.
We did have one sneaky in there.
So did attach that one Dawn, and now Divine Departure onto this Edward Newgate is going to be minus 8,000 power. The Virgo yet again minusing it 10,000 power in total, and he's just going to let it go. He says, I'm not going to give up anything for that right there. And now Monet going in and swing. There's no Dawn left open for Don Quixote, Doflamingo, and Nathan, so you know that slow beam not going to be a factor, right? There's no Razonante to be able to restand Dawn at the end of turn, and so countering out of that first swing, now going in with another Monet. Looks like he is going to pitch that Charlotte, putting there that 1K, and does not swing with the Virgo, just simply because, well, it could be free blocked.
That's right, because of the leader's ability. Oh, sorry, no, because of the blocker that was already in play. It is worth noting, though, that Nathan has kind of chosen a middle of the ground here play, kind of going for board and threatening the hand, but still giving plenty of attackers on Paul's side that even with that potential, let's see, 1 redirect plus 1 life gain, we need minimum of 3 attacks to connect as Paul. So we do potentially have a really cool survival line here for Nathan. We go for the redirect, we go for the gain life. Now we swing 12 here. Goldie Rogers still potentially in play in our hand as a 13K rush, which will be really hard to fight through if you're Nathan.
But if he just attaches all 2 leaders, since that redirect on the leader effect, Nathan's going to have to get out of a 16,000 power swing. So looks like he is just going to go for that. I think he's got a pretty good shot. So 5,000 power leader says, I'm not going to be able to have it, and let's go to game 2.
Yeah, Paul on ace is our game 1 winner here in the One Piece card game finals at Bandai Card Game Fest Las Vegas. And that was a grinder of a game 1. Both of these decks just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Paul playing Newgate after Newgate after Newgate, and our Doflamingo player going, I'm going to have this board on turn 4, and it's going to be the only board I have for the rest of the game.
It was definitely a wide and aggressive board, and now what we're going to see here in game 2, especially because over on the Doflamingo side, being the 19th seed within the bracket, he's going to be able to choose in this game first or second. In game 1, it was Ace that chose whether he wanted to go first or second in there. So Dofi going to get his priority curve in this matchup, right? Going second, it's going to give him a little bit of a better shot. And things looked good for a while for our Doflamingo player over in that game. But as you were talking about the big wall, the huge amount of card draw and value that you can get off of your characters, and the amount of pressure that you can apply every single turn, just went in Ace's way that time. But players going ahead, stacking up. We'll see. Looks like the Doflamingo player having Divine Departure, a Dellinger for the early game. Dellinger we didn't see in the early game. In the first game, we'll see if he decides to keep it.
2 notable things that were missing from our Dovi player was 10-drop Dovi and 8-drop Dovi. We never saw those cards come down as powerful removal tools / as cards that could help us, build a board after having it be controlled. We basically just had our mid-range cards the entire game.
And especially with that 8-cost Dofi, like you mentioned, being an 8 cost 9,000 power stat line and putting a character on board is excellent swarm potential to be able to apply pressure on every single swings. Think about it in that game, if he had, instead of a 6,000 power Monet swinging, maybe he had a 9,000 power Doflamingo, right? That's a lot more pressure. That's a lot more cards. So we'll see if we can see it in this game 2. Players keeping their hands.
All right, let's see how we decided to best out the curves. We did make the ace player go first, and we're starting off with the Otama for the draw 2 trash 1 because our leader has 3 life cards or less.
It's going to be a decent start, right? You more than likely want to see like Garp or Izo, I think, as your first search, but you can't complain at the end of the day.
Yep, and then we see us trashing that Gungbum Red Rock. Once Virgo start hitting the board, removal is no longer going to be an option. May as well get these dead cards out of our hand as soon as possible.
So does play that Dellinger that we saw within the starting hand. We see a Rosinante in the hand, that 5 cost in Nathan's hand.
Yep, there is maybe an argument here if you're Paul to maybe not swing and give Nathan the free search, but I feel like when you have a 5-life leader, you got to get him down low and slow. The natural benefit you have of playing a natural base 5-cost leader is you technically work with more resources than normal other decks, but Ace is not a normal deck, unfortunately.
Just attaches 1 Dawn and passes the turn. Like you were saying, maybe opting not to swing to allow that free search on the Dellinger. Now that we're at 4 Dawn, we'll see if something like Sugar is played. Even though Sugar can be removed easily by Ace within this next turn, potentially, with an Atmos or something of the sort, Sugar at least is going to use that on-play effect to ramp one Dawn, which is inherently very valuable.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, once Virgo hits the board, you never really care about what kinds of removals your opponent has, but most of the time, if they have a normal kind of removal like KO-based removal, this deck really loves it because you have so many good on-KO effects. But a deck like Ace, when the removal is relevant, it's really relevant because it dodges those on-KO effects.
So ending the turn, playing that one-cost Sugar on the field, maybe getting a search within the next turn. That Atmos, like I mentioned, if he reveals 2 Whitebeard Pirates kinds of cards from the hand, he's going to be able to remove a 4-cost or less, and there goes that Sugar. Attaching 1, and once again, does not want to allow that free search for Nathan.
Yeah, I think Paul is recognizing how much advantage this Don Quixote Pirates engine represents for him, that he just wants to turn it off as soon as possible. But Nathan's like, fine, if you're not attacking, I'm going to use my 1-drop Sugar and get a search anyway. And if you're going to continue to not attack me, I'm going to do it again next turn, probably.
So this Sugar going in, looking at the top 5 for a Don Quixote Pirates type card, has 5 Dawn left, so, or actually, is it 6 Dawn?
I believe we're at 6 as we ramped a turn before,
yes,
right? And
correct.
we were on the going second curve, yeah.
Yeah, so ends up finding that Virgo, probably something we want to play down on the field right now, and is going to attach 1 and swing 6,000 power, add lead. Ace taking it and using leader effect to draw 1 card, going down to 2, and the Virgo as the priority option, as we've talked about in this matchup, goes off.
Yep, and I think now that we've gotten this set up, I think maybe the card that Paul was trying to keep Nathan off of was this Virgo, but he was able to get to it anyway. Now I think we can start attacking safely because there's a lot of threats we need to take care of, namely this Sugar. It's actually going to become kind of a big problem for him if it continues to stay in play unfettered.
Yeah, and thankfully you do have that Garp right here, right? 2,000 power to be able to swing at this Sugar. It's a lot to really give. I mean, it's not necessarily a lot to be able to keep it alive on this swing, but do you really want to give a card at this point to be able to keep this alive? But is going to go for the redirect into the Dellinger. So now with that Dellinger on the on-KO effect, re-ramps 1 rested Dawn, essentially making your leader effect for free and getting another search for a Don Quixote family kind of card. We see a 2K treble in that stack, also Dellinger himself. 8-cost Doflamingo, right? As we talked about, something that was missing last game. May go ahead and try to utilize it now.
Yeah, and you know what, I'm thinking about this. I really like this redirect here from Nathan because it essentially says if you want to get rid of the Sugar, it requires 2 of your attacks. Kind of reminds me of like the green Bonnie players whenever they have arrested Bonnie in play and you attack it. Thanks to my leader ability, it really costs 2 attacks. Really nice.
So I think is going for that 8. No, oh, maybe that's the 10-cost Dofi that's in hand.
Is it the one of him standing up? Yeah, that looks like the 10 cost to me too. The Don
say it's
-3.
hard. They're both purple.
That's true. They're both purple and they're both Dofi.
Ends up going for the Dellinger instead, and now forcing the Ace to swing at the Sugar basically prevents any of those swings from going at life. And now using that Jozu to attempt to get rid of the Virgo. Virgo using his once per turn effect to be able to keep him on the field by Dawn minusing 1. Puts Dofi a Dawn back, right, to try to hold off as many Dawn as possible. And let's see what Nathan is going to do. Has that Rosinante in hand as a 5-cost. I think I see a baby 5 in there and a Dellinger as well.
Yeah, we have 8 Dawn here as Nathan to work with, but we're going to start off with this lead swing of Virgo, maybe not trying to give up any information to our opponent. There's no need to Dawn minus because nothing's rested. We're going to go ahead and use the Marco here to counter out of that, or sorry, use our leader ability here. No, Marco's a 2K, so yeah, counter out of it. And then there's the 8-drop.
The 8-drop Doflamingo, right, being able to play a 5-cost or less Don Quixote type card from your hand onto the field is going to be perfect for this Rosinante. Rosinante with that effect on the on play of trashing an event card to draw 2 is nice filter. Try to find some different pieces, and at the end of turn, if you fulfill the Dawn amount requirement, you're going to be able to restand 2 Dawn at the end of turn. It's perfect for a slow beam.
Yeah, and now you can see why we're talking about why this 8-drop Dofi is so important. It does what this deck wants to do, which is establish more of your Don Quixote Pirates in play, but also is a gigantic body in and of itself, which is going to be very valuable for attacking at Paul's life. You know what? You want to know what's better than attaching 2 Dawn and swinging 8? Attaching 1 Dawn and swinging for 10 is a great example.
It's going to be nice to see on this defensive side, right, with the use of so many different counter events like Bullet String, like slow beam, like I was talking about. But now Ace going into his turn. See what he decides to do, Ryan. Does he have that I Am Whitebeard event to be able to play out the Newgate onto the field? Does he just want to play the Newgate out on the field?
We do know from his open deck list that he also plays the 9-drop Whitebeard from OPO2. It might not be the most useful one at this current board presence, but it gives him more options of cards to play when he does get to his I Am Whitebeards. It's a pretty tough call here because this board's really tough because you have to kind of swing into the Virgo, but what's cool about the Dovi leader is that if you commit any Dawn to try to get an attack that's a good number, like a 9 or even a base 7 if you're attacking with a weaker character, you can, Doflamingo can punish you for using those resources by swinging into something stronger or swinging into something that has a powerful on-KO effect.
Yeah, that redirect effect on the leader for Nathan is so powerful if you're not prepared for it. And you also got to think about with that 8-cost Doflamingo on opponent's attack once per turn. When your opponent attacks, you can use that effect to tap one active Dawn to ramp one Dawn, allowing him to ramp within the game. And here comes that I Am Whitebeard on the 9 Dawn turn to play out Edward Newgate, that blocker that we've been talking about all day. Draw 2, trash 1, and is going to allow to attach 2 rested Dawn to both character and leader to be able to maybe pressure this Virgo or at life.
It is worth noting, though, that by doing it in this order, we are leaving ourselves open to the slow beams that we saw in the last game to maybe resting our 10-drop Newgate. And as we saw, Nathan can deal with a rested 10-drop Newgate very well, thanks to cards like Divine Departure or Virgo.
Could rest the Newgate, could also rest the Jozu, right? The other attacking threat that's on the board. So is going to use that 8-cost Doflamingo effect and now use the leader effect to redirect into life, force him to swing at lead to take 1 and go down to 4, as Paul has kind of been almost starving him in a sense throughout this beginning of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So Nathan's leader effect essentially read Dawn -1 draw a card, or sorry, Dawn -0 draw a card, thanks to the 8-drop Dovi giving it back to us.
Yeah, and that's why this combo is so strong when these 3 cards on Nathan's side get on the field. Allows for so many different moves and allows for so many different ramping potential and leaves that Jozu as active, right? Doesn't want any of these bodies to swing at it, says, you know what, I'll just pass it off to you.
Yeah, you want to force Nathan to kind of make his characters rested so you can swing into them on your turn rather than give him the option to swing into your rested characters by attacking into his life and just like either letting him take it or playing into slow beams, which is just not what you want to be doing if you're Paul.
So now, I believe at 9 Dawn in total, is just going to start out with a 9,000 power swing at lead, and Ace goes ahead and takes it, using his leader effect to draw 1 card, just once again, giving him as many cards to have access to as possible, you know, since Nathan does not have any hand disruption within this deck.
Yeah, and now Nathan has a question to answer, which is, am I okay with risking my characters of being swung at if I don't have any immediate answers for dealing with what's already on Paul's board? Because while Donkey Doflamingo can redirect to protect one of these characters one time, there's a lot of threatening attacks on Paul's side, especially if we have another copy of 10-drop Whitebeard, which, as we know, Paul loves playing.
And especially because he's got that 12,000 power character on the field, one of these attacks could just be free blocked, right? And give you no value whatsoever. So what are the correct numbers? There's a lot of time left within this untimed finals here in the One Piece trading card game, and I'm excited to see what Nathan does here.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting call on the dynamic of this matchup here and kind of how both players are fighting to maintain a board rather than build one because they're both so good at building them. It's been really cool to watch.
So now goes with the 8,000 power swing at lead. Ace now going to use his leader effect to pitch that Marco for minus 2,000 power and a 1K out of it to get out of that attack, and still has that Rosinante to swing with. Is just going to go a bare 6. Now that the leader effect is gone on Paul's side, he's just going to go with some lower numbers, right? Since Ace runs so many different bricks in the deck without counter, may try to catch him without it, but just 1Ks out of that one.
I noticed that he didn't use the block on the Newgate, even though it was kind of free there. And now as Nathan, we get to ramp with the sugar to then give us the 5th Dawn we need to play the Virgo, and then at the end of our turn, Rosinante gives us 2 Dawn back that we can use for potential events or defensive plays. Now that's a pretty scary board there if you're Nathan.
Especially if you redirect into this sugar, right? Playing down another character on the field that we saw like the last game. Gonna be curious to see how Paul advances in this, right? That Atmos still a threat to attack, especially at leader as a 5,000 power character. And just hard playing that 10-cost Newgate is gonna draw 2 and trash 1 here before attaching the Dawn. Pitches the Marco a non-counter card within the hand and attaches the Dawn to leader and also Jozu, right? Leader now being 8,000 power and Jozu being 9.
You're now seeing the power of decks like Ace and like Emo. It's the consistency that they have to do these powerful plays game after game after game, turn after turn after turn. Newgate, Newgate, Newgate. So beautiful to see. We have the AK swing here going at our rested Rosinante character. What is Nathan going to do?
Gonna want to have to keep this guy alive, right? Especially because he's so good in synergy with your 8-cost Doflamingo and also gives you so much access to stuff like Bullet String and Slow Beam, as we were talking about earlier. Is gonna go ahead and 2K, 1K to go to 9,000 power, as that Rosinante is a 6,000 power base character, and still a couple swings that he's got to think about, right? Especially with this Jozu being 9 and the new gate being 12, but potentially there's a redirect that could happen.
Yeah, and now if you're Paul, you're like, dang, I was trying to maybe bait out a redirect with that first attack. Since you didn't, you still have it in the back. Now going for these attacks seems like a risk, but we're going to go for the 9 into the Rosie, but Nathan can just redirect into his 9K Dofi, counter 1K to protect it, or redirect into the Sugar, lose nothing, and play 1 card from hand. That's perfectly fine to have in play.
That's a lot of options here for you for the Doflamingo, and why this deck is so hard to pilot, right? It is so specific on Doflamingo's side. There's so many different options that you can use, and your leader effect is so important within games, being able to essentially nullify an attack, sometimes for your benefit.
You know, there is a world too where we can just redirect it to our leader again and get a free draw essentially off of our life. Seems pretty valuable here. I guess it depends on how likely you think it is for Paul to attack with the new gate that's allowed to attack. If you're Nathan too, there's also maybe a consideration of maybe bluffing that you have slow beam and you're thinking about something to kind of like threaten Paul later on whenever we have 2 Don active. I don't believe he currently has 1 in hand, but Paul don't know that.
No, I think if he did have slow beam, he would have used it in the beginning of that first attack with leader and just done like a 1K counter after that to be able to proactively rest something like Jozu or the new gate to make the decision even harder. But lets it go, does not want to give up 2Ks potentially, or even other cards to keep this alive.
And I do like Nathan's patience here of waiting to use his redirects on the most threatening attacks, the attacks that have the most power potential. Because if they're an easy result of like, I don't really care about this Rosie, I'm going to play something better on my next turn anyway, I'm going to get rid of it, I'm going to conserve my resources, conserve my life, conserve my really powerful characters in play while we're at it.
And so passing off the turn, does not swing with that new gate, means that no redirect happened within that turn. Still has a couple different threatening options with Virgo and that 8-cost Doflamingo at a full 10 Don turn right now. We'll see what he plays. Can't exactly tell what card he's put. It looks like he's put a 1-cost Sugar to the front.
I mean, that's pretty much any card in his deck.
So immediately going in and tapping that Sugar with that activate main of tapping itself and 1 Don to be able to search for a Don Quixote Pirates type character.
And I see a couple options there. I see the Violet, which we saw last game, which could recycle things like our Divine Departure, which I believe is in the trash. Could also just give us an extra blocker that we could use to kind of stymie some of this aggression that Paul's representing. So we are going to choose to add it to our hand. We have the swing here with Virgo. We have the free Don minus here on the Jozu to make it a 5K. We're going to swing into it, demand some cards here out of Paul, but we're just going to get rid of it and get the free draw off of our leader because, once again, Jozu's base power is 6,000.
And I think just similar to last game, right, you've got a couple new gates on the field. You even have an Atmos on field that's just kind of sitting there hanging out with the rest of the guys, you know. The Whitebeard Pirates is going to go ahead and free block on that Doflamingo swing of 9,000 power with the Edward Newgate. Still a couple swings that Doflamingo has access to, and Nathan, and we'll see how he decides to play it out. If he wants to play a character on the field like that Violet that we talked about, or anything else, he's going to have to play over one of his own characters.
That's right, and that's where decks like the Doflamingo deck, which is very sticky with its board, can sometimes kind of struggle. We saw Nathan in the first game prioritize being like, you know what, I'm not going to play over my stuff. I'm just going to continue to have this board, and if you get rid of something, I'll replace it later. That didn't really work out for him in the first time, so maybe he wants to prioritize having as much pressure as possible. These Sugars, while they are very good, aren't exactly going to push the clock of this game any faster.
I would hope that he's not going to... It feels like he's just thinking about attaching the rest of this Don to Virgo. Okay, phew, I was going to say, that was going to be a lot of Don to attach to Virgo, but goes in with an 8,000 power swing, does not go in with the Virgo effect of Don -1 to be able to minus 2,000 power somewhere. Still has that blocker as well.
I mean, if you did attach all that Don to the Virgo, if you're Paul, do you just like counter out of it? Probably not, but like it would have been like probably 16 or 17 into the new gate, so it's probably a reasonable thing for you to stop.
So is going to go with leader effect, pitching the red rock on this for minus 2,000 power and 1K to get to that 7,000 power after the minus 2,000 power put Virgo to 6.
Let me just say this, by the way. If Paul's MVP is Edward Newgate, Nathan's MVP is Virgo. This is definitely one of the most powerful cards in this strategy and what makes it such a viable option into the format right now, especially against decks like Emu.
Especially in this matchup. So with the leader swing is just going to go ahead with the free block there and tons of Dawn left over for Nathan on his side. We'll see what he decides to do. If he plays down a character onto the field like that Violet that we were talking about, does not have that Rosinante to be able to restand Dawn at the end of turn like he did previously because it was KO'd. And just like that, playing down that Violet over the Sugar and passing off the turn.
Yeah, going for a nice conservative approach there. He does lose access to the continuous value of the Sugar, but it probably wasn't long for this world anyway. Getting the blocker there to further protect his board and his life seems pretty valuable. Nathan is playing for the long game right now, and I think it's rewarding him because he is slowly whittling down the cards that Paul has to do. But there we go, another Newgate. Is this the 7th Newgate that Paul has played in this match so far?
It's the 7th one so far, and the 3rd one of this game, or
Wow.
the 7th one of the set.
Of the set.
3rd one of this game. So he's going to pitch that Goldie Roger before attaching the Dawn. Is finally going to use Atmos potentially for a swing. Atmos with the 2 Dawn as a 5,000 power base character is going to be 7,000 power in total. Is now going to contest this Virgo.
I like going for the Virgos here because it's going to kind of reflect what Nathan's been doing, which is threatening, what Nathan's been doing to Paul. Paul's not going to be threatening Nathan's hand size or force the question on using the leader ability, and that gives him more reign over how he can choose to attack.
Right, because if you have 4 life, that's great. But if there are 3 12,000 power characters on the field, that
That's
4
not gonna
life
last that
may
long.
not. Yeah, it may not feel like 4 life. So is going to go ahead and pitch a card. It looked like
I think it was a. What is
it's the
that card?
10-drop Doflamingo alternate art. Was
So it was a Divine Departure
used?
for a 3K. I
looked
think
like it.
was what it was because we had 8 swinging into the Virgo, so I think that was perfectly fine. Yeah.
So-
I mean, if you're Nathan, I do like the waiting to use the leader effect on the most powerful swings. But what that does is it gives Paul the option just to go pass because all of his most powerful attacks are blockers, so they're even more valuable when they're inactive versus when they're rest. So he doesn't need to attack with them to get value.
Especially when you have the Violet with that on KO effect as a blocker that you don't even need to redirect to with your leader effect, and then the Sugar on top of that, to where if you did want to redirect into that Sugar and attack. So just good on the offensive side for Paul to kind of halt the train right here and just say, okay, let's just move into your turn. You're kind of in this situation now like you were last game where you're just kind of attaching Dawn everywhere and swinging away. I've got these 3 giant blockers, still 1 life and a healthy amount of cards in hand. Can you actually get past this?
Yeah, Paul is definitely recognizing that this is a different game than game 1. Nathan has his preferred curve, and he has a lot more of his preferred cards in this 8-drop Doflamingo, which does change a lot. And he's factoring that in, and he's changing his approach to this matchup, whereas Nathan is maybe leaving himself vulnerable to this kind of starving game plan that Paul is unlocking for himself.
Nathan only has about 3 cards left in hand. And again, like we were saying, 4 life feels like a lot until there's 12,000 power characters everywhere on the field. So starts out with an 8,000 power swing, attaching 3 Dawn to his leader. See if he decides to go at Atmos or decides to go at lead. I would assume. Ooh, actually, I don't know what I would assume.
It's a pretty tough call, right? Because either way, it's actually potentially still a free block. And if you don't have ways to threaten these Newgates, they're like even extra free blocks because they might bait you into using a lot of resources into attacking one of them, but then the other one can protect that one. You know what I mean? So as long as Paul has access to 1 up Newgate, like, it's going to be really tough for Nathan to threaten anything, let alone the life. But it was at life. We do take it, and we get the extra draw here as Paul.
Just going to give him another option, especially in this matchup when you have so many cards in hand. You're going to be able to decide when you go down to 0
Yeah.
a lot of times, right? Especially for things like Goldie Roger in there. But Goldie Roger, as we see in the trash right now, is going to go ahead with the 7,000 power swing, minusing 2,000 power, I believe, the Atmos and swinging at the Atmos.
I believe so, yeah.
So that Atmos is going to be a 3,000 power character. So just go ahead with the free block. Try to focus as many of these attacks as possible onto that Atmos, especially with only 2 reasonable attacks left on Nathan's side with the Don Quixote Doflamingo. You still have 2 12,000 power blockers. It's going to be tough to KO this Atmos.
Yep, and one card I want to call attention to is that Goldie Roger that's in our trash as Paul. That is a known one of in his deck list that both players are aware of, and now we are as well. That is not going to come into question. So even though he's at 0 life, this blocker Violet can still get plenty of value for Nathan throughout this game.
So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this develops. Nathan playing around with the Dawn, trying to think of the math. And this is a critical part of the game I feel like this could soon be a turning point with Paul having this gigantic board, right? He's about to potentially play over an Otama for a 10-cost Newgate, or maybe even a 9-cost Newgate that we see in the hand back from OP02.
Yeah, but that'll give a big boost to his leader's base power and make it even harder for Nathan to do what I believe he's trying to do, which is threaten Paul's life total this turn by allocating enough Dawn to threaten the most amount of cards and maybe also threaten the blockers in the process. Here we have, I think that was just a 9K swing here from the 8-drop Dofi.
So 9K swing, we'll see where it's going. But just once again, like I was saying, a free block from the Edward Newgate, the big 12,000 power blocker, stopping that attack. And if Nathan wants to get past the last Newgate blocker, he's going to have to attach a lot of Dawn, at least maybe 3 of them to get to 10,000 power if he uses that when attacking effect to minus 2,000 power, the last active Newgate. But is that worth it?
Especially when Paul has plenty of cards in his hand. You know, normally when you have characters as gigantic as the 10-drop Newgates in the game of One Piece, it's kind of a failed experiment to try to attack into them and defeat them with power alone, because it requires so many resources from you to try to hurt them, and it requires so little resources from your opponent to protect them.
We saw plenty of counter cards in Paul's hand, right? A couple 2K Jozus, some 1K Yamatos I think I saw as well. Plenty of different counter options. I think even some 2K Otamas in there.
I mean, Paul's been able to sculpt his hand every single turn by playing Newgate after Newgate after Newgate with the extra draws from the leader ace ability. We're seeing time and time again whenever this deck is on screen why it is one of the most powerful decks ever released in One Piece since OP13, and one of the best decks to play for this event. And Paul is an absolute master of it so far in this set.
And so this Virgo swing going in at the Atmos is going to use the effect on the Atmos as well and lets the KO happen. I think maybe with all the Dawn that Nathan has left over is kind of thinking about maybe Divine Departure, because if he uses Divine Departure, Violet is a 4,000 power character. Sugar has a little bit of power on it if you attach some Dawn, especially if you minus 8,000 power. Maybe try to swing in at one of these Newgates, just get super aggressive, but just halts the train with all of that Dawn up and leaves it off to Paul into his turn.
Yep, and it is worth noting that because Paul is at 0 life, I think he's kind of telegraphing to Nathan that he's not planning on attacking with these Newgates, but we're playing yet another Newgate. It's the 8th Newgate of the set, but this is a different one. This is the 9-drop Newgate we were talking about on play. It's going to give plus 2,000 power to our leader until the end of our opponent's turn, and also has a Dawn X2 ability when it attacks to get rid of a 4,000 power or less, which could answer that Violet, but of course it'll trigger its on KO effect, but it'll get rid of the blocker in the process.
Yeah, it releases another threat on the field of Nathan, so now he's just going in 9,000 power. So what do you do now if you're Nathan? If you use your leader effect to redirect somewhere, these Newgates could start swinging and clearing your board with only so few cards in hand right now.
Yep, we are going to use the leader ability. We are going to redirect. It's going to be to the Sugar, so we are losing a character, but we're going to get one back in the process. But like you said, Jake, that does unlock some more options for Paul to attack into. But he's at 0. Can he really afford to attack with his blockers here? If it's in the process of getting rid of characters, I would say they're essentially doing their job. You know,
I think it's kind of a tricky spot, actually, because especially a Monet comes onto the board as 6,000 power character, but is potentially going to go with 1 at this point. Again, does have a lot of counter in hand, right? He could kind of threaten Nathan to try to go in for lethal and try to bait it, and so swings with that first Newgate is going to go with the on-KO effect of the Violet blocker to get Divine Departure in the hand.
Okay, and now that we have a currently rested Newgate and only 2 blockers remaining but 5 attacks, that Divine Departure is going to be more than enough to maybe threaten Paul's board. But did we see Paul maybe consider attacking with his second Newgate? I'm not sure that's a safe attack.
I don't think Paul is really threatened at all. We see, I think there was like 4 or 5 2Ks.
And we are an 8K-based leader, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we are going to be 8,000 power, so outside of that 8-cost, 9,000 power Doflamingo, Nathan's going to have to commit Dawn to be able to even swing at him if he wants to.
And a lot of Dawn to maybe even threaten the life. So I guess I do kind of like pushing the board here if we're Paul, because also if you think about it, like if a Newgate takes out one of Nathan's characters, it's essentially blocking that attack for the following turn, because the purple Don Quixote deck has a lot of things, but I don't believe Rush is one of them.
And one of the things that you can do is potentially swing this Newgate at the 8-cost, 9,000 power Doflamingo.
Yeah.
You know that Divine Departure is in the hand, but with the 3,000 power difference between those two, would have to command multiple cards in the hand, and with only a 3-card hand, it would be everything in his hand if he decided to keep this alive. So how much value do you put into this 8-cost, 9,000 power Doflamingo? And What is he going to do? Again, so many cards in Paul's hand. I genuinely don't think he's afraid of losing on this clapback.
Yeah, I definitely could see it, especially because we're threatening the characters are not going for life. If he was just blind swinging life with these characters, maybe we would be playing a bit risky. But we are going to be using Nathan's entire hand to protect this 9-drop. And Paul's like, okay, I'm going to use my final attack to get rid of it. You have 4 attacks, 1 card in hand, and I have a giant hand. Even if you go the full 17 on Virgo, I think he's telegraphing I can stop it.
Well, here's the thing. Because of the Dawn minusing that we did as well, Nathan's only at 9 Dawn, so it would actually be a 16,000 power swing, which as an 8,000 power leader on this turn is going to make it very, very difficult for Nathan to be able to try to get lethal. But especially with 4 life and a potential redirect that you could do, you could survive in the turn, right? If you just kind of go like all in with leader to try to get as many cards as possible, to hold the characters, and I don't think that's a great idea, but that is something that you can do. Goes ahead and swings with Virgo. 8,000 power now at lead. No blocker, so is going to have to be a card out of
It is
Paul's hand.
16,000 power. That's all 9
Oh, he attached all the Dawn. I'm sorry.
It's one stack,
the stack, yeah. So here we go on the counter. Used leader effect in 3 2Ks so far,
That's 15, I believe, then, total. No, that's 8, so that's 16. So we need 1 more card, I believe. 1 more counter.
Has plenty of that in hand. We saw the Otamas and things like that. We saw the Yamatos in there as well. Maybe just trying to, decide which is the best card to get rid of, and it's going to be Yamato to get out of that attack, putting for the leader effect 2K, 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 and 1K.
Yep. You know what? In terms of plays Nathan could do, making our opponent get rid of 5 cards out of the hand is a pretty good one because, like you said, I think Nathan does have time to take a turn off here and just threaten Paul's hand because, once again, Paul's in a sticky situation where even if he attacks with these new gates, the best place he's going to go is face, and that just unlocks more resources for Nathan, which he desperately needs right now.
So is going to go for the Monkey D Garb. Go ahead and look through the deck for a 3-cost or higher. It is going to be that Yamato there. Yamato going to be a nice card to draw, and immediately is going to play. Just going to refill that hand that we dumped earlier in the last turn.
Just get it all back and get that Dawn Honor Leader turn on all those really powerful effects. We still have, I believe, 4 Dawn in the back here. I definitely want to see Paul threaten this Virgo because basically no matter what, we're going to have a redirect happen this turn either to the life or to the characters. And then we have a free, I believe the original new gate is 10 base power. Or no, 11, I think. 11 or 10. It's going to be plenty big to threaten the Virgo.
It's going to be guaranteed to get rid of it, even with a redirect that happens. So with that first leader swing, is going to be able to knock that out on the 7,000 power. Now going in at life, the first life taken, the second life taken right here. We'll see how far he decides to pressure, right? There's a couple swings, especially because he's back down to a 6,000 power character. You do actually have to worry about the 2 bodies that are on Nathan's side of the field. So you don't want to get too carried away, but give you good setup to be able to go for lethal in the next turn.
I'll give you 1 counter out of a 16K attack. I wouldn't give you 2. 2 is a little hard to stop.
And especially as 12,000 power characters, if he decides to jam in with a big swing right, it's a little bit easier to counter on a 12,000 power base character than it is with a 6,000 power leader.
Almost exclusively.
So still has 4 Dawn left to work with right now if he wants to go aggressive. I don't think you need to attach Dawn anywhere at all. As the ace on the new gates, the Yamato can swing because the Yamato does not have rush, but I don't know. What could the best play be? Maybe even playing over right now on this Yamato
for another
with
blocker.
Marco. Yeah, just another blocker that is going to potentially be able to draw 3 cards, right? So is just going to wall up on the defenses. I don't know how Nathan's going to be able to penetrate this.
Yeah, because basically we can stop any big wombo swing you go for this turn and draw 3 cards in the process, while also maintaining a gigantic board presence that, even though you've had 4 life for the longest time, as we said, once these 10 or 12K attackers start flying, it's not going to last very long.
And so here we go, just spreading out the Dawn, trying to think about maybe the numbers on what to swing. Got to put yourself in the best position possible if you can't win this turn to try to survive in the next turn, or even just go for lethal. What's the best numbers for lethal with the characters? Starting out with the Usohachi is going to be able to rest that Marco, right? Because we are both at 8 or more. Dawn now goes in with the Virgo, an 8,000 power swing. Once again, just going for the 8s. Starts out with the free block here. Another 8,000 power swing with the Monet as another free block, and the rest going in with Doflamingo is going to be leader effect and 2K on the 9,000 power swing to go and get out of that attack. Now Nathan passing off the turn, and we'll see if Paul gets in.
Yep, with the one redirect we have, we essentially have 3 life cards total, but we have 5 gargantuan attacks. Maybe, sorry, 6 gargantuan attacks here for Paul that could close out this game. We have 1 new gate coming in, that's 1 life card. We have a second new gate coming in, that's 2. And here we have another new gate. We're gonna redirect that attack, and we're gonna redirect it back to the leader, and we're gonna, Nathan's gonna use his leader effect to redirect to the leader for a game, making Paul, piloting Ace, your winner of Bandai Card Game Fest Las Vegas. I got a little confused there for a second. Sorry.
I love the ending between these two players, right? You know, we talk about that there's high stakes within this, you know, being crowned the Bandai Card Games Fest champion, but having fun along the way,
Yes.
even though Ace was able to win 2-0.
Yep, like I've always said, these finals are already a good outcome for both players, but thanks to Paul getting that victory, it's now a great outcome for him, being that he is now our One Piece card game champion this weekend.